So, good morning, everybody. My name is Brendan Gilmore from BPG Strategy, and I'm delighted to be here to moderate the first panel discussion of the day. The title of the panel is The Customer at the Heart of Digital Transformation. And I have four great panelists here with me. Ben Sampson, who's Director of Digital Programs with Yorkshire Building Society. Manila McLean, who's Chief Information Officer at Newcastle Building Society. Phil Gosset, Head of Innovation at Nationwide. And Celine Allain, who's Financial Lead at both 360. Welcome, everybody. Just in terms of time-honored tradition, I'm just going to run around and get everybody to give a quick introduction to themselves. So maybe we'll start with you, Ben, if that's okay.
Yeah, morning all. Nice to be here. I'm Ben Sampson. I work for the Yorkshire Building Society. We're a national building society, have around 3 million customers, about 45 billion balance sheet. So we're quite a big company. And I am the Director of Digital Programs, which means I'm responsible for all of our digital activity and our transformation activity as we move forward into the future, delivering our, hopefully, exceptional customer experiences.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. Manila?
Hi, everyone. I'm Manila. I am the CIO at Newcastle Building Society. My background is in digital transformation, and I've worked in financial services for about 20 years with a range of organisations, from life and pensions to large retail banks and smaller challenger banks. At Newcastle Building Society, we are a mutual building society, but we're also a market-leading savings outsource management platform for other banks and building societies. We have 4.5 billion in assets, and collectively with the society members and the customers of our solutions clients, we have around 1.5 million customers.
Excellent. Thanks, Manila. Phil, over to you.
Hi, Phil Gosset, Nationwide Building Society. I'm Head of Innovation there. My background is just innovation, 10 years at Vodafone and 10 years at Microsoft. Nationwide, 16 million members, 20,000 colleagues, and the second largest mortgage and savings provider in the UK.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. Celine?
Hi, everyone. So Celine Allain, and I'm responsible for the financial services practices at Board 360, who's part of LogMeIn. So my background is purely cloud and digital transformation. So prior LogMeIn, I've worked with Salesforce.com and Oracle and Dropbox, where I essentially help many organizations transform and other accelerate their digital transformation. So at LogMeIn, my role is to help and support financial institutions with their digital transformation strategy, in particular to help them transform how consumers engage and communicate with them. I'm not sure if you're familiar with LogMeIn as a company, but we've been around for over a decade now. And essentially, our mission is to help organizations unlock the potential of the modern workforce. And we do that successfully by operating across 3 key businesses. But the one that I'm representing today is the customer engagement and support business, with solutions like virtual agents, AI-powered knowledge base to support and improve customer experience and employee experience. So we have customers across a wide range of the different sectors within the financial services industry, like NatWest and Legal & General, and a number of credit unions and building societies like Advia. So, yeah.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. So last and definitely least, I'm Brendan Gilmore, BPG Strategy. It's a boutique consultancy. I have about 25 years experience in financial services, and the last 10 has been more in fintech and tech more broadly. And I help financial services businesses and fintechs with strategic and operational challenges, but also to successfully engage with each other. So I use my experience and my network to bring people together. And it's simple that, I think the future of financial services lies in the best of both. And oftentimes they come at things from different perspectives and they don't speak the same language. So I just try and bridge the gap and translate between the two. We've got quite a few questions to get through with the panel, so I'm going to get straight into those if that's okay. And in fact, the first one is a challenge. I want to either dispel or confirm the stereotypes about building societies. I think there's quite a few. And the ones that sort of spring to mind are the fact that members tend to come from much older generations. The propositions for younger generations tend to be quite limited. Systems and processes tend to not be cutting edge. Risk appetite tends to be conservative, and the leadership tends to be quite mature or experienced. So I just want to get everybody's view on what they think of that, because I think that's a sort of a commonly held perception outside the industry. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think from the inside as a kickoff. So maybe Ben, start with you on that one.
Yeah, no worries, Brendan. I guess it'd be hard to dispel that perception for Yorkshire Building Society. I think we do tend to over-index in older customers, particularly on the savings side. Obviously, mortgage customers tend to be a bit younger, but building societies do tend to resonate with those of an older age group, particularly those that can remember when they were a bit more prevalent pre-demutualisation. So we do have an older population, but I guess for me, in kind of dispelling myths, I think there are a couple of myths that I'd kind of like to dispel, which is firstly, the age stereotype that those people are not interested in digital services. And I think that's really key, that digital is just as important to people over the age of 40 as millennials, which is often those that get targeted. So I think digital is just as important to our customer base. And secondly, I think, society is becoming more aware of the impact that we have on each other. And I do think that if we can provide the right propositions and services, that mutuality, being owned by the members and having a very purposeful digital ambition, will resonate with those younger end. And I think it's just a matter of, at this point in time, we need to work a bit harder to provide a service in a way that works for them. So I wouldn't dispel it, Brendan, but I think there are some myths around those age demographics that might make people feel that digital and technology is not as important. I'd argue that it's just as important for those customers as it is for any other.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, particularly in the current environment. Manila.
I would agree with a lot of what Ben's just said, actually, and also it depends on what we mean by older generation. I think at Newcastle we have it's about 50% are over 55. So I would say under 55 is it's still relatively young. In terms of digital proposition and experience, we do tend to have our younger customer base that use our digital proposition. So for example, our mobile app, about 80% of customers that use the mobile app are under 35. But the growth in digital demand, especially this year, and we've seen significant growth in it, has been across the board from all age groups, really. To your other point about processes, risk appetite, technology, and so on, I think as an industry that's right. We do tend to have that as a reputation. I guess our business model is a little bit different in that we are a mutual building society, but we're also a savings management business for other banks and building societies, typically digital banks, actually. So the digital offering, while we we will drive forward our digital proposition and digital services, some of which may not be as high on the agenda for Newcastle Building Society, they perhaps are for our other solutions clients.
Okay, so that helps you drive it forward as well, because you see what they're doing. Interesting. Phil, Nationwide, bigger building society, obviously have a different approach.
Yeah, let me come at it a slightly different angle. So I think, we're a mutual, right? We're a building society, and I think there's a lot of resonance between the younger generation and what we stand for as a mutual. I don't think we're great at telling that story, but I think that's a way of kind of breaking some of these implicit assumptions. There's another context piece, which is that we're financial services, we're not IT. But IT is setting the expectations of what people's experience should be like, how quickly things should happen, how things should happen. So I think it's really difficult, right? We're coming in, we're being asked to behave in a way that is outside of our experience and our core capability. And also as an organization, we're fairly risk averse, right? We're regulated, and yet if you ever work with an IT organization or for an IT organization, it's all about being agile and being first out there. Well, so there is a real clash of cultures here. I think that these, we can talk about them as stereotypes. I think the danger is when they become implicit assumptions. So at Vodafone, it was interesting. So the early adopters to the text message were, of course, teenagers. But the second wave was actually their grandparents, because there was a way that they both had time to communicate. So you would never assume that that was the case. But actually, when you sit down and do the research, things are very different. So I think that when it comes to thinking about digital and the digital journey, it's really about grounding it in making sure that we understand the reality of what's going on and the expectations of that.
Okay, thank you. So, Celine, from an external perspective, how do you perceive those stereotypes from the sort of interactions you've had with building societies so far?
Yeah, so I think I would agree with Phil. There's a lot of assumptions when it comes to building societies. And I think it is these assumptions that is actually impacting certain financial institutions to accelerate their digital transformation or to go through a disruption in terms of digital. What we see in that particular sector as a technology provider is that historically building societies have really been able to differentiate themselves when it comes to offer new financial products and services, but also by creating that more intimate relationship with their customers. But I guess what's happening now is more that the market becoming more competitive and the consumers' needs are changing as well in the way they want to interact with financial institutions and building societies in this case. So I guess it's more a question about how do we understand what the members want and how do they want to interact with building society despite the fact that they are an older generation or younger generation. And I do think that there's, from what we see with our customers, there's a big opportunity for building societies to use or leverage the digital transformation to keep on differentiating themselves on the market. I guess a good example of that is the number of credit unions or building societies that came to us during COVID. But simply with this genuine question, that is, how can we make sure we keep on providing that experience to our members, because our call centers are busy. We can't answer phones as we were used to do before COVID. So how can we make sure that we use the right technology to serve these customers that just want to interact with us, but they have to interact with us in a different way than before. And I think when we talk about technology to improve customer or members' experience in this case, it's really about how can the technology respond to a particular need. I think building societies has that very close relationship with their members. And one of the fear that we see in this market is to have a technology that doesn't cope with that level of service, and that probably cuts that one-on-one sort of personalized experience that building societies do very well. So I would say there's definitely a place for the building societies to embrace digital with the right technology.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you. We touched on it through a couple of your answers there, but I just want to go in a little bit deeper in terms of how mutuality affects this. You know, it's not Monzo, it's not Starling, it's not Barclays. These are mutual organizations. How does that impact what you do and how you do it? And maybe start with Phil.
Yeah, so there's also scale that comes into this, right? So with 16 million members, that's like 1 in 4 of the population here. So when you think about, we have all segments as members. And also when we are looking at whether we focus on existing members or potential members, it doesn't really make sense when you're at this scale to really think like that. But the other aspect of scale is that we focus on our members as our customers. but we've also got 20,000 colleagues, so we can also focus on our colleagues as well and helping them. And also there's another way of thinking about it, which is around the business itself, so processes and digitization of that. So we're at the scale where we can actually take on digital projects on all of those axes, if you like. Yeah. So I think that it's a very different answer, I think, or approach to, say, Ben's.
Yeah, well, I was going to come on to Ben because we did this when we met a couple of weeks ago to talk about this, Ben. It was something that was close to your heart. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, look, I think mutuality means a sharper focus on your purpose and the decisions that you make. So, the technology would allow you to really ramp up levels of automation and digitization to quite an extreme degree. So if you look at the business models of someone like a Monzo or a Starling, where they can exist wholly digitally, it's possible and feasible to deliver a customer service completely online. But when you consider mutuality, it means you're owned by those members. They're the people that are not only your customers, but they own your business. So, we're here to make sure that customers can, for example, build savings habits and save for a rainy day, or to find a place to call home. And I think when you think about that, it might mean that sometimes you choose to not digitize, to deliver a service in a different way and maintain a human touch. Just to bring it to life with one of the examples that we've been talking about, one of our easier processes to completely strip all of the paper, all the human touch out of, and just stick a form online would be lodging a bereavement and a power of attorney. And we feel that as a mutual, we could save a ton of money on that, but that's not the right decision, is it? That's where you want some human touch, you want some empathy. But I think as a mutual, we would take those decisions to say, there's no shareholders breathing down on it. We think it's right to maintain a little bit of cost there and maintain that human touch at the expense of the potential gains through digitisation. So, we feel really passionate about delivering what our members need and want and maintaining that. And I think the difference actually is that it's easier for us as a group of mutuals to take those calls. Having worked at more commercial institutions, it's quite hard to take that call. If there's a bottom line that gives shareholder value, sometimes you have to go after it. So I think there's a positive tension there, and I think it allows us to make some really positive decisions that are very customer-centric.
Yeah, and we'll come on to it in a later question, but I wonder, do the external suppliers understand that? And maybe Celine has a perspective on that. But before we get on to Celine, Manila, do you have to split yourself in two then, given the two kind of customer bases you have? In the one instance, mutuality matters, in the other instance, it's all about commerciality, or is that the way you approach it?
It's not so much about that, but there is, I guess, a different customer base that we need to understand. But I would absolutely echo some of the points that were made there by Phil and Ben. Being mutual really does allow you to put customer at the heart of everything that you do, and really focus on giving a better service for customers. So when we think about digital and digital transformation within the organisation, it's not about replacing the face-to-face experience, and in fact, growing on the high street is very much part of our strategy, and ensuring that we continue to have that presence. It's also, when we think about digital, it's not about processes and automating them, but about actually thinking digital first, because that it's not about trying to replace any existing processes. These are the experiences that customers expect and want. We know that from the amount of engagement that we have from our members and from our customers on the solution side that use our online services, our mobile app, and so on. But again, I think Phil just said there as well, digital is more than just about the customer experience. It's also about the colleague experience, and digitally enabling greater efficiency across the organisation, becoming more agile. To your question though about, do we need to think about customers in different segments? It's interesting, on the savings side of our business, because of our solutions clients, we cover the length and breadth of pretty much every demographic that you could think of. So the propositions that we build really need to have that flexibility to have a great customer experience for all of those different types of end customers.
Okay. And Celine, what's your perspective from the outside? Do you find that you come up against that mutuality thing, and where you're pushing something that's hyper efficient and actually they say, no, we don't want it that way, and we don't need a bot, we don't need a sort of an AI solution?
Yeah, yeah, and I think what's happening is that when we talk about digital, is so broad, and quite often there's a real confusion between should we digitalize, which means replacing human, and it's not the case. It's actually making them actually empowering the human. When we look at some example, I mean, Legal & General is one of our customers that does it very well. They support their customers, so any sort of repetitive questions or process that can be automated can be done online. And also they really try to listen to the voice of the customers, of what they want. So it's about automating and digitalizing services that the customers want and that type of customers want. Because you need to look also at the different demographic and the different type of customers you have, and what are the requirements, and all of that technology should enable organization to be flexible and to provide different sort of experience to the customers. And then when it comes to the human side, what we see is that, I mean, humans are there for a reason, and what technology should do in that digital transformation is not to replace them, but is to make sure that they become more empowered, that they have the time to serve the customer in a more strategic way, and leave the other low value, maybe queries or things that can be easily automated to a bot or virtual agent. And there's different ways to do that, but we also see that automating processes and digitalizing the content that they need to use to serve customers is a great way for employees to sort of be able to do their job in a day-to-day basis, but in a more simpler way, or more in an easy way. So it's really sort of using the technology to empower the employees, but at the same time to provide another channel to the customers. Because I mean, the way we do things now has changed, and sometimes people don't really want to get in touch with a human for the first interaction. So how do you support these customers that want to have more self-services, but at the same time, how do you enhance as well that seamless sort of journey from someone that is using self-service, but that maybe during that same journey wants to be interacting with a human. So it's all I'd say a package or a picture of that journey that should be digitalized, from the self-service having the capability to be escalated to a human, and digitalize as well that human interaction. Yeah.
It's interesting because I prefer going straight to chat if I'm going to go on to anybody. I don't want to ring, and you don't want an email because it's going to take too long. The phone, typically you get into a queue. I would much rather chat and see somebody instantly respond to me. So yeah, I think everybody needs the full suite, and that's the challenge. This is more for the building societies, but how do you define your customers when you're thinking about digital? Do you just think about the older members that you have already, or do you think we might be missing some younger customers here, so we need to have something snazzy, we need to have something that is Monzo equivalent, Starling equivalent, to get them kind of attracted? How do you define customers, I suppose, is the question in the context of digital. Who I have an start? Ben, you start with that one, please.
That's the tension, Brendan, I guess. So we've just talked passionately about mutuality and members being the people you want to serve, and if your members of today are a particular demographic that will have their own needs and wants, then it's easy to just fulfill those needs, and that's not necessarily going to attract a new membership, and that's where it becomes difficult. And I would guess from Manila's perspective, because they're building a broader suite, it might be a bit easier to use those things within the society as well. But it's a tension that we're facing all the time. That we obviously want to provide our purpose to all customers that need it. Building savings habits is not something that just people who are preparing for retirement need. You might be building savings habits to buy a home or buy your first car, or even just have enough money in a savings account for a rainy day should the boiler pack up. Again, it's about trying to think about a way that will enable you to deliver different services and propositions that can meet different needs. So to come back and answer the question, we do consider the customer base being existing members and potential new members, and we drive through those that might have a need that aligns with our purpose, and that's how we look at it. I think the tension comes in when you have those differentials where you prioritise your time and money to deliver the right services that will fulfil needs of existing, but potentially entice new as well. So it's always an interesting dynamic.
Anything to add to that, Manila or Phil?
Yeah, I mean, when we're thinking about who is the customer, it's such a broad spectrum. It's all of our members, but it's also our clients and their customers, and then also all of our colleagues. And when we're thinking about digital strategy, it's understanding essentially what is the problems that we're trying to solve, or the solutions that we're trying to create that will support all of those different groupings. So it's very broad brush. Who is the customer?
Can I? So again, a bit orthogonal. Defining the customers a bit odd. We've got lots of customers. It's really about understanding our customers, and it's about understanding what are the issues and challenges and problems and goals and needs and wants that they have. We don't have a shortage of customers, but we just need to be clever about how we engage with them, and when we engage with them around helping them live better lives, meet their goals better, become less stressed. So I find I think if you have to define a customer, what you're probably trying to do is find a solution for a user for a solution you already have. I think if you're busily trying to solve real problems that real customers have, then you don't need to define them; they're already there.
Okay, I suppose it does depend on the size of the building society as well. So some of the smaller ones who've never engaged in anything digital, don't even have an online form, might need to think about this differently, because they have people walking past the branch every day who don't come in and are never customers because they don't have an app. I'm just wondering, sort of to extend that question, have you found in the past 6 or 7 months that people are asking for things that you don't do, but you could do because digital is there? And I'm thinking about current accounts or investment products or things like that 10 years ago were impossible to build from scratch, but now that are available pretty much off the shelf from some of the banking as a service providers. Have you found people saying, look, I like saving with you, I like borrowing from you, why can't I have a current account, or why can't I have an investment product? Has that conversation happened?
We do have a current account. We do have, we're of the scale. But I think that what I would say is that people's expectations of what a current account is and how it works and how you interact with it has certainly changed. And I think that it's funny you picked the last 6 or 7 months. So I think the impact of COVID pushing things more and more digitally means that people's expectations of what the digital interaction or the digital experience should be has really put some pressure on us around the way that we think about that, the way that we engage with our members. So, but
Manila, I saw you nodding.
Yeah, I think probably a number of organisations, when the pandemic hit, we just took a look at our strategic initiatives to consider, are these still the right things to do? Are there any we need to pause or accelerate? And thankfully, a lot of the initiatives that we had in flight that we were driving forward were the ones that we needed to accelerate. A lot of that was around digital transformation. So the mobile app, for example, which we only launched in May, that was definitely an increase in demand. But there's other things like developing an SME proposition. We've continued to progress, and we'll launch that very soon. And that'll not just be for the Newcastle Building Society, but also the solutions clients that we have who are in or who are looking to move into the SME market. So yeah, there has been. It's probably not so much a change in demand, but just a reaffirmation and an accelerated need for what was forming a lot of our strategy.
And Ben, from a YBS perspective?
Yeah, look, I don't. We used to have a current account and we closed it. We didn't think it allowed us to focus as much on mortgage and savings and being brilliant at that. I think at the scale we're at, it's better to be really good at mortgage and savings than be okay at a number of different things. I don't find that customers ask us to open a current account or do credit cards. I think they more request things like an app. So we've just launched our app as well recently that's had a great take-up. And I think it's things like that that allow customers to interact with the products that we offer in different ways that make it easier for them to do business, that we find.
Yeah.
I also think as well, it's interesting that I don't think customers would ask for this, but if you look at things like open banking and open finance, it should mean that providers like us that just do mortgage and savings can do that in a much more seamless manner. And I think as a industry, financial services could look to adopt that more and kind of embrace the ecosystem and really deliver better propositions that really were only attainable for the likes of Nationwide or the big banks in the past that had that breadth of account holding.
Yeah, yeah. And Celine, from your perspective, are you engaged in discussions around products that are for different customer bases within building societies or different types of propositions within building societies, or are people just coming to you to say, fix what we've already got?
There's a bit of both, but I would say the majority would come sort of to digitalize some services within. I mean, what we see is many organizations wanted to digitalize the mortgages process, for example. So there are this first simple phase of saying, yeah, we've got a lot of questions around. Customers are asking a lot of questions around our product in general, or they want to, some support to open an account. And these things can be easily automated by a virtual agent and be supported as a self-service solution. But then there are more specific products like mortgages, for example, where we see there's a huge demand of young buyers, for example, where they just want to have information, look for information by themselves and have an easy process to do so before engaging with someone. And it's where we are really helping actually to digitalize that service and that process entirely, so people can, the members or the customers can get information by themselves. And then what we do, we also support then the advisors, because it comes to a stage where that process being supported by self-service will end and will need to be sort of escalated to a human, but how is that human can then continue seamlessly that journey from something that has started digitally, so as a self-service process, and then enabling the employees to continue that journey with solutions like AI, where they will have visibility on what that member or visitor has done online on the self-service tool, and then how can we enhance that and continue that journey with them. So it's really a combination of both.
Yeah, okay, understood. I had a very interesting experience with BT recently upgrading broadband, where the journey certainly wasn't seamless, and I was bounced around from 3 or 4 different people, and it when it doesn't work, it's immensely frustrating. Yeah. So in terms of your approach, all of you, to digitization, like do you have an internal preference for building things, for partnering with people, for buying things? And I know you'll have different answers based on the size and shape of your organization, but I suppose that the audience here will be building societies wondering how you get things done, but also some service providers wondering, how you make your decisions. So do you have a preference for that? And if so, why? And maybe Manila, start with you on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have a clear technology strategy and a target architecture that we're moving towards, building on top of the strong foundations that we already have. I guess it depends on what the problem is that we're trying to solve. We would definitely consider different ways, and we already do that in many different ways. So there are examples where we've partnered with software development teams who have particular skills or experience in areas that we're looking to move into. So, for example, some of the applications that we've been developing recently are using new technologies and new approach, moving into cloud as well. So we've augmented our skill base with external teams to help with building that capability, and I guess you learning from the expertise of others. There are definitely other examples where typically SaaS products, where they're utility products and they're our best in class in the market. We'll buy them, we'll partner with them, and typically integrate those into our ecosystem. I think where we would really want to be preferring to build, it's where you want to control the end user experience to ensure that what your end customer base is experiencing and working with and engaging with is absolutely what is fitting with your strategy. But it depends. It really depends on what the problem is that we're trying to solve and what the commercials are around that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably good to know for people who are listening, that you will take a variety of approaches. How about you, Ben, in YBS?
I think we're very, very similar to Newcastle by the sounds of it. What Manila's just said, that there are certain things that kind of crown jewels that you want to own yourself. I think over the past 4 or 5 years, if at all possible, we've looked at buying, because you tend to buy in a better capability rather than building. But that's not to say we haven't built a lot of things in that time as well. I guess if you were looking at maybe one of the things that would be interesting to particularly the fintechs and some of the sort of startup tech firms that might be watching this, I think one of the challenges we have when we buy is that we still do have quite a lot of legacy IT, which I'm sure the others do as well. And that poses distinct challenges. And I guess what I've found in the last few years is that it tends to be your bigger platform providers that have a way of dealing with that and addressing with it, and they have an understanding. We've just re-platformed our lending business onto Iris MSO, for example. So, core part of our business, we were quite happy to get a provider to do that. There's not as many fintechs that are as prevalent, and it tends to be that barrier to how can they approach companies that not greenfield and cloud only, for example. So I think we'd love to explore that more, but I don't think we've quite got there yet, Brendan.
Okay. And Phil, in terms of whether you're buy, build, or partner?
So there's kind of two axes here, I think. So there's the context of being a mutual. So every penny we spend isn't our money; it's our members' money, right? I think that it's really dependent on the solution. If the solution exists and is perfect to our need, then it makes sense to buy it. If there's a partner out there that's pretty close, it would make sense to partner with them to tailor to deliver exactly what we need. And then I think in reality, if what's required has to do some deep integration with our systems, then it probably makes more sense to build it, because actually getting somebody in to engage with our systems becomes so expensive compared to us doing it. That seems to be the thinking.
Okay, makes sense. And Celine, what's your experience? And actually, probably more, what's your deployment model? Do you build and then leave, or do you have a sort of a platform model that you charge for on an ongoing basis? How do you deploy?
Yeah, so the solution, Bolt 360, it's a cloud solution, it's a SaaS platform. So it's really about agility and time to value. So we do it for customers. So we host the platform and we support the deployment of the solution. I guess in this process, we believe that as an organization, you should do and focus on the things that is strategic and important for your business. And in terms of technology, we come as a partner and as the expert to make sure that we deliver time to value, really. So we would support that deployment. But it's also, I think, about we offer AI, and when you think of AI, I mean, we've been maturing this technology for the past 10 years. So the question is quite often, how can I get something as valuable or as powerful as what we've been maturing for the past 10 years? If you really want to get to that stage, it will take a long time. It's not impossible, but it will take resources, time, and effort to get to a stage where you can have a proper technology that supports your processes and your requirements. So we have that already ready to be used. And the beauty, I guess, of the technology is that it is going to come and adapt to your policies, your processes, and your people. Because it's not only about the technology, it's more often about the needs of your customers and internally how you want that technology to align with your policies, your processes, and your people, but also with your IT landscape, because there's so many different technology that will actually respond and address a particular requirement and challenge within the organization. There isn't one technology provider that can respond to everything, or they will maybe do, but not in the best way. So it's how that technology for that particular business case can fit within your IT landscape. And the technology itself has to be flexible and mature enough to be able to then integrate with the right systems. I mean, when we talk about bots, quite often we think of a bot that can answer basic questions or FAQ questions. You look at NatWest or ICICI Bank, they have evolved the bot to a stage where it is conversational, it is transactional, and it's really automating 90% of these processes that were before human. And again, it's leaving actually the human to be dealing on more complex situation and more probably more personalized one-on-one interaction with customers.
Okay, that makes sense. And then just sort of the difficult question, excuse me. How do you get digital done in your organizations? Manila.
How do we get digital done? I guess, so we'll follow a customer-centered design approach. We'll engage with customers, and I talked earlier about who is the customer. It depends on the scenario, but we'll engage with them to truly understand what is going on, what are the opportunities to improve, what are the problems that we're trying to solve. But then we go into I guess quite an iterative cycle. So we'll work with the customer in that scenario to develop what maybe a proposition that we can test and learn from. That continuous feedback loop is helping to build stakeholder engagement, to prove the value of what is being developed, to ensure that it's actually going to add value to the customer or whatever the business need is. When we're launching something, we'll typically go through alpha, beta before full launch. So we'll maybe launch something in an alpha phase to perhaps a couple of hundred colleagues, and we'll then roll out a beta phase to maybe a couple of thousand customers, and iterate as we're developing the initiative before we go out with full launch. So I guess that there's a bit of a test and learn iterative engagement that will continuously follow. The other thing, just to pick up on something that Celine mentioned earlier about as you're developing the technology, we need to think about flexibility, and that's absolutely key for us. As we continually modernize and enhance our whole tech stack and our tech estate, we're not just thinking about what we know we need right now or in the near future, but continuing to evolve our architecture to ensure that we have that flexibility of choice in the future. So as open banking and open finance continues to evolve, that if we do choose to partner and buy in different ways, that we have the capability through API layers, for example, that we can do that. So we may not be doing it right now, but we want to ensure that we've got the flexibility to respond to changing customer and market needs.
Imagine the approach is similar in the other two building societies, and I'm also interested in how you get the decisions through, and how much political support you need for kind of big projects, because these are often difficult decisions, and culturally they're very difficult to get through as well sometimes. If you've got an institution that, again, you mentioned legacy technology, Phil, so how do you get those done?
So I think that comes down to having a good digital strategy, because actually digital is not one thing, right? It's everything. It's the 1,000 different things that you're running in your organization, and it's juggling the priorities of that. So I think if you put the time and effort into the strategy and engaging with the strategy, making sure that you prioritize properly, funded properly. So it's not just about getting budget for this year to get this digital program kicked off. It's making sure that you've got budget for the following 5 years to support and evolve it. And then there's the other context for that, which is that we're not living in a bubble, right? There's the external social expectations of what digital even means, and things that are emerging and changing all the time. So it's not just, so I suppose the other aspect of flexibility is to be able to do things in a small enough way so that you can land small things and evolve the scope and the goal and the purpose of that through those times.
I think that, Ben.
No, I mean, I think most people approach this in a similar way, and we'd be approaching it in a very similar way to how Phil and Manila have just said it. I think for me, one thing I'd add is I don't think it's possible to achieve transformation, and particularly cultural change of any scale, without a shared purpose and everyone pushing in one direction. And that's one key thing that we've worked hard on at Yorkshire Building Society, is to make sure we're very, very clear on our North Star. We've kind of got a strategic blueprint that all colleagues and leaders have been immersed in and understand. And that pushing the same direction as much as anything is just as important as how we execute. And that's kind of the premise and the foundation of how we believe we'll be successful with the next 2 or 3 years of significant change.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because smaller building societies I've spoken to have, they'll say, yes, digital is on the agenda, but it never really percolates to the top. And perversely, given what's happened with COVID, I suspect that's going to change, and it will percolate to the top, and it'll knock some of the other things off. But it was back to kind of almost the stereotypes that we talked about at the beginning. If the leadership don't understand or live digitally, how are they ever going to contemplate and sort of push things through? And I suppose that brings me around as well to the question of how should tech businesses approach you, given it was one of the points you made, Phil, about tech being on one side and financial services, regulated financial services on the other side. What tips would you give to people who are service providers who clearly see an opportunity and want to help and probably could help? How do they approach you? And Celine, I'd be interested in your perspective on what's worked for you, but let's start with the building societies again.
So let me go. So it's quite odd. I had 10 years of Microsoft research and then came to Nationwide, and to doing innovation in a company like Microsoft and then trying to do innovation in a company like Nationwide, it was a real shock for me. So I had no appreciation of the risk of a very low risk appetite and a highly regulated environment. And that's a real culture clash. And I think that's not really appreciated by many organizations that don't have a financial services background coming to engage with us. So I think that's, if I was to recommend something, it's really to appreciate the reason why things take time and processes take a long time isn't because building societies are old and slow. It's because you have to appreciate actually how many people you need to get involved in to get some things passed through. And I think once you appreciate that, it becomes much easier to engage with.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the point I made earlier about the future being the best of both. There's a reason why some of these institutions have been around for 300 years, and because they've been able to survive with that risk appetite, with that sort of slower, methodical approach. Ben, anything in terms of that?
I think Phil's hit on the head there. I guess one thing I could say is listening to Celine talk about customer and the importance of creating space for human touch. refreshing. I think that's a nice understanding of why mutuality matters to us and how a tech firm could consider that. So that's quite rare, and I think that would be a good thing, and don't often see people thinking it that way. So building on the reg background as to why we do what we do, understanding mutuality is probably the other thing that would really allow people to find the right way of connecting with us on our level.
Yeah. And Manila, the question was around how tech businesses engage with you based on the fact that you're different. I don't know whether you have anything to add to what the guys said, given you dropped off quickly.
Yeah, I think I caught just the end of what Phil was saying, and Ben. I think that the angle is definitely around what's the addition that's being brought to the customer, and I guess for some of the smaller building societies, it's just being aware of cost, because I guess that potentially as an inhibitor for some of the smaller players. But it's not necessarily about the commercial aspect of it. I think, as I say, that the biggest focus is on what's the impact on the customer.
Yeah. Okay. And Celine, just to finish this one, have you got any tips for people in terms of what works and what doesn't when you're approaching financial services institutions like this?
Yeah, and I think that there've been very good insight shared about it from you all. I think the first thing is, yes, Phil is right. There's different stakeholders in organizations, so it's not about having a technology. For example, if you look at Bolt 360, we do offer virtual agents and AI-powered knowledge base, and we support employees. But it's not just about customer service and customer support. How is that going to impact the other departments within the organization? What is the overall sort of goal and the objective? How can we address that as a whole? And it can be then a project that starts with customer service and support, but we need to take into consideration the bigger picture. So I would say being conscious that one technology for a particular problem doesn't mean that we don't need to understand the rest of the stakeholders and how can that impact the whole organization. And then in terms of understanding the business, as Ben said, is really important, because when we come and speak with the like of NatWest and Legal in general, the conversation I will have with a building society will be different, because there's different purpose and different needs, and their customers and their members, in fact, will probably want a different experience. And it's about understanding that. We always start from almost like being a consultancy, agency to the organization. Is understanding the business and the drive and how we can improve things. And it's not always about removing what an organization has, because as you said, I mean, building society has been working and has been successful for a long time. So it's about improving that and making sure that they cope with what's happening at the moment, with what's current, because digital is there and it will not go anywhere. But how do we embrace it? What's right for us? And how do we start? I think these are the right questions. And that's how we, as a provider, would come to an organization. And the last thing I'd say is flexibility, as Manila reiterates. And without being flexible, it's just like, putting something in the middle of a process and expecting it to work by itself. It has to be flexible and understand the different processes and the way organization works, and the different users of that technology.
Excellent. I'm conscious of time now, and I just have one final question for you, and I suspect this is on everybody's lips, and that's how you attract and retain talent in the digital sphere, because it's an industry-wide problem, and you clearly, from a building society perspective, have an additional challenge, I guess, in terms of being mutuals and not being as probably based in Shoreditch and things like that. How do you attract and retain talent? Start with Manila.
I mean, we're fortunate in that we've got a pretty booming tech scene in the northeast here, but of course with the impact of the pandemic, the geographical boundaries are removed. You know, you don't think about tech recruitment and just in your geography. I think it's really important to highlight that the talent will be working on really delivering something that's incredibly important for customers. So making a difference is what you're attracting on. But of course, you also need to be conscious of, you know, modern tech, exciting tech stack that you're working with, new ways of working, partnering with others as well. So you need to be highlighting a lot of those aspects.
Ben, anything to add there, or Phil?
We face sort of challenges in letting people know that we're not a crusty old organisation where you've got kind of people riding bikes to power the generators and things. We've got quite a competitive market we're in West Yorkshire, so you've got the likes of Channel 4 and HS Digital, Sky Betting and Gaming. It is hard to let people know that, you know, we've got just as an exciting proposition and we've got some of that tech as well. I think the big thing that we push on and want to continue to push on is purpose. That, you know, exciting tech is one lens that people want, but to have a solid purpose and some good values, which neutrality is, I think is a selling point. So that's something that we hope will continue to attract the right tech talent into our business as we move forward.
And the only thing to add to that is, I think the mutuality, which is kind of tied into purpose, I agree with Ben. I think that we don't fully appreciate how attractive that is, to not be working for a large, financially money-driven organisation, but instead an organisation that's about helping people. And I think that's a key differentiator that we can play.
Celine, you presumably have the same challenge in finding and retaining good tech people.
Yeah, I'd say it's, yeah, I guess in our world, in the technology space, it's so broad. So I think it depends on the role. There are roles where it's a little bit more challenging to keep people, and other roles where it's easier. But what I wanted to add to that is what we see actually, it's that sometimes technology does help in retaining talents. People want to have their job being simplified by technology. So you know, if we can enable people to do their job in the most simplest way possible, they're more effective and more productive, and they do actually what they are paid to be done, and not doing things that they feel like shouldn't be part of their remit. So I do think that technology in that sense also support that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we're probably over time at this point. So I just want to say thank you to the four of you. I think that was a really, really interesting discussion. I hope the audience gets a lot of decent insights out of that. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And to everybody there, thanks for watching. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.